My name is Claire. I am 28 years old, and for a long time, I thought I had the perfect life. I thought I knew the man I loved better than anyone. His name was Daniel. I met him 2 years ago at a friend's wedding, and from the moment he smiled at me, I felt something I couldn't explain. We spent that night talking about everything: work, family, and little dreams. And when he asked for my number, I said yes without hesitation. In the first months, Daniel was everything I dreamed of. He sent me good morning messages every day, called me before sleeping every night, and planned small surprises on weekends. We had coffee in quiet cafes and took long walks in the park. He told me I made him feel peaceful, and I believed him. I never thought to question who he really was, because I trusted him completely. There was one thing, though: Daniel never spoke much about his work. He only said he was in finance and sometimes needed to travel. I didn't push for details. I told myself that if he wanted to share more, he would. But sometimes, when his phone rang, he would step away to answer, his voice low and quick. I noticed, but I convinced myself it was nothing. One evening, we were having dinner at my apartment. He had cooked pasta, and we were laughing about how badly I had cut the tomatoes. Then his phone rang. He stood up quickly and went into the kitchen. His voice dropped to a whisper, and I couldn't hear what he was saying. When he came back, I asked, "Who was that?" He smiled and said, "Just work. Nothing important." I let it go, but deep down, something didn't feel right. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became harder to reach. He canceled dates at the last minute, saying he had urgent meetings, and sometimes he didn't reply to my messages until the next day. When I asked if something was wrong, he just said he was busy. I told myself I was overthinking, but the little voice in my head was getting louder. One rainy Saturday afternoon, I decided to surprise him. I baked his favorite chocolate cake and drove to his apartment. My hands were cold from holding the box, but I felt excited. When I arrived, his car was in the parking lot, so I knew he was home. I rang the bell, but no one answered. I called his phone, and he didn't pick up. After a moment, I heard movement inside. Then the door opened, just a little, and Daniel stepped out quickly, closing it behind him. He looked surprised to see me, and for a moment he didn't say anything. Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Claire, what are you doing here?" he asked, his tone light but his body tense. I held up the cake and said, "I wanted to surprise you." His gaze flicked over his shoulder toward the closed door before coming back to me. "That's sweet of you, but now isn't a good time," he said. I frowned. "Why not?" "Aren't you home?" Daniel shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his watch. "I'm actually heading out soon for work." I pointed to his car. "Then why is your car here?" He hesitated for just a second, then replied, "A friend is picking me up." His answers felt rehearsed, and my stomach tightened. Still, I didn't want to fight in the hallway. I handed him the cake, but he didn't take it. "Another time, okay?" he said softly, almost apologetically. I drove home in silence, the cake still sitting on the passenger seat. My mind was spinning with questions. Who was in his apartment? Why didn't he want me to come in? I tried to push the doubts away, telling myself maybe he really was busy, but the image of him closing the door so quickly wouldn't leave my mind. That night, I barely slept. The next day, I decided to call him early in the morning. He didn't answer. Hours passed before he finally sent a message. "Sorry, busy day yesterday. Can we meet later this week?" I typed back, "Sure," but my hands were trembling. Something had changed between us. He was there, but at the same time, he felt so far away. A few days later, we met at a cafe. He seemed relaxed, like nothing was wrong. I wanted to ask him about the other day, but the words caught in my throat. We drank coffee, talked about movies, and for a while, I almost convinced myself everything was fine. But when I excused myself to go to the restroom, I saw his phone on the table. A message lit up the screen. When will she leave? My heart stopped. I returned to my seat, my mind racing. I didn't say anything right then. I wasn't ready to face what I had just seen. After we said goodbye, I went straight home, my chest heavy and my head full of dark thoughts. Who had sent that message? And who were they talking about? That night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I called him and asked directly, "Daniel, who sent you that message today?" There was a long pause on the line. "What message?" he asked finally. I told him exactly what I saw. Another pause. Then he sighed. "Claire, it's not what you think," he said, his voice low. But he didn't explain. The days after that were tense. He sent fewer messages, and when we met, he seemed distracted. I felt like I was standing outside a locked door, trying to see inside. My friends noticed I was quieter than usual. One evening, my best friend Laura said, "Claire, something is wrong. You need to find out the truth." Her words stayed with me. The next week, I made a decision. If Daniel wouldn't tell me what was going on, I would find out myself. On Friday night, he told me he had to work late. I didn't believe him. I waited until I knew he would have left his office. Then I drove to his apartment. This time, I parked a little farther away and walked up quietly. The lights inside were on, and through the curtain, I saw a shadow moving. Not just his, but another figure. A woman's silhouette. My breath caught in my throat. I stood there for a few seconds, frozen, before I turned and walked quickly back to my car. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold the steering wheel. It felt like the world I had been living in was suddenly a lie. When I got home, I sat in the dark, my mind replaying every moment we'd shared, looking for clues I had missed. The way he avoided questions about his work, the times he canceled plans, the phone calls in another room. It all seemed so obvious now, and I felt foolish for not seeing it sooner. But I still didn't know the whole truth, and I needed to hear it from him. The next morning, I woke up early, my heart still heavy from what I had seen. I decided I couldn't keep this inside any longer. I called Daniel and asked him to meet me at the park near my apartment. It was a quiet place with benches under tall trees. I thought maybe, away from the noise of the city, we could have an honest conversation. He arrived looking calm, almost too calm. He smiled faintly, but I didn't return it. "We need to talk," I said as soon as he sat down. His expression changed slightly, but he didn't say anything. I took a deep breath. "I came to your apartment last night. I saw someone there with you, a woman." For a long moment he said nothing. He stared at the ground, his hands clasped together. Finally he whispered, "Claire, there are things I haven't told you." My stomach tightened. "Like what?" I asked. He looked up at me with eyes that seemed both sad and guilty. "I'm married." The words hit me like a punch. I blinked, trying to process them. "You're married?" I repeated, my voice shaking. He nodded slowly. Her name is Sophie. We've been married for 6 years. My chest felt tight. All this time, you never told me? He shook his head. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't expect to meet you, but once I did, I couldn't walk away. I felt anger rising, mixed with disbelief. So what was I to you, Daniel? Just someone to spend time with when you were bored? His voice cracked as he said, No. You mean more to me than you think, but I'm stuck. Sophie and we're not happy. We barely talk. But I can't leave her right now. I stood up from the bench, my heart pounding. Then you should never have started this with me, I said sharply. You lied to me every single day. His voice followed me as I walked away. Please, Claire, don't go like this. I need you. But I didn't turn back. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My mind kept replaying his confession. I thought about all the moments I had believed in, the dinners, the walks, the quiet conversations. Were they all built on a lie? I felt tears slide down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. Over the next week, Daniel sent me messages every day. Some were short, I'm sorry, and some were long, explaining how he felt trapped, how he wanted to be with me but didn't know how to leave his marriage. I didn't reply. I needed time to think, and I couldn't trust my heart to make the right choice right away. Laura, my best friend, came over one evening with a bottle of wine. You're too quiet, she said. You need to talk about it. I told her everything, from the surprise visit with the cake to the moment he admitted the truth. She listened, shaking her head. Claire, you deserve someone who can love you openly, not someone who hides you. Her words cut deep because I knew she was right. One Friday night, I made a decision. I would see Daniel one last time, not to fix things, but to end them. I called him and told him to meet me at the cafe where we'd had our first date. He arrived looking nervous. Claire, he began, but I held up my hand. I can't do this, I said firmly. I can't be part of your secret life. You had a choice to be honest, and you didn't take it. I don't want to spend my life waiting for someone who might never be free. His shoulders slumped, and for a moment I saw real pain in his eyes. I don't want to lose you, he said quietly. I swallowed hard. Then you shouldn't have lied. We sat there for a while, both silent. Finally, I stood up and said, Goodbye, Daniel. I walked out of the cafe without looking back. The cold air hit my face, and I took a deep breath. It hurt. It hurt more than I could say, but I also felt something else. A strange, small sense of freedom. In the days that followed, the sadness came in waves. Some mornings, I woke up and reached for my phone, expecting a message from him, but there was nothing. Other days, I felt lighter, as if I had finally stepped out of a dark room into the sun. One afternoon, I was walking home from the grocery store when I saw Daniel's car parked across the street. He was sitting inside looking at me. I froze for a moment, then kept walking. My phone buzzed with a message. Can we talk? I didn't reply. I knew that if I did, I might get pulled back into his world, and I couldn't let that happen again. At night, I would think about Sophie, his wife. Did she know about me? Was she living with the same doubts I had felt? Part of me wanted to tell her, but another part thought it wasn't my place. I decided to let it go. My story with Daniel was over, and I needed to leave it behind. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had only seen the surface of his secrets. And deep down, I wondered what else he had been hiding from me. 2 weeks had passed since I ended things with Daniel, but I still felt his presence like a shadow. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected to see his name. Every time I walked past a cafe or a street we used to visit, I felt my chest tighten. I told myself I was moving on, but deep inside, I was still searching for answers. One rainy Tuesday evening, Laura came over with takeout. We sat on my couch, eating noodles and watching a movie. Halfway through, she paused the screen and turned to me. "Claire, I didn't want to tell you this before, but I think you need to know." My heart skipped. "Know what?" I asked. She hesitated. "A friend of mine saw Daniel last weekend, not just with Sophie, but with another woman. Someone younger. They looked close." I stared at her, unsure if I had heard correctly. "Another woman? Not his wife?" Laura nodded slowly. "I didn't want to make it worse for you, but maybe this will help you see the truth. He's not the man you thought he was." My hands clenched around the blanket on my lap. I thought I had already accepted his lies, but this was another level. That night I couldn't sleep. The thought of Daniel living not just one, but possibly 2 different lives twisted my stomach. Who was he really? How many people had he deceived? The next morning, I decided I couldn't just sit with this new information. I needed to know for sure. I started by searching his name online. Most results were normal: work-related events, a LinkedIn profile, a few pictures from parties. But then I found something that made my blood run cold. A photo posted on social media by a woman I didn't know. She had tagged Daniel in it. The caption read, "Dinner with my favorite person." It was dated just a week ago. My hands shook as I clicked on her profile. Her name was Mia. She looked young, maybe 23, with long brown hair and bright eyes. Scrolling through her photos, I saw more pictures of Daniel, walking in the park, sitting at a restaurant, even one where he was holding her hand across a table. There was no sign of Sophie in any of them. I felt a mix of anger, disgust, and something like relief. Relief that I had left him before sinking deeper, but also anger, not just for myself, but for Sophie, and now Mia too. We were all living in his web of lies. I debated what to do. Part of me wanted to message Mia, to warn her. Another part wanted to call Sophie and tell her everything. But in the end, I decided to meet Daniel one last time. Not because I wanted him back, but because I needed to look him in the eye and hear the truth. I sent him a short message. "We need to talk. Tomorrow. The park at 6 p.m. He replied within minutes. "Okay." The next day, I arrived early. The air was cool, and the leaves were starting to turn yellow. I sat on a bench, rehearsing what I would say. When Daniel arrived, he looked tired, maybe even worried. "Claire," he said softly, as if we were old friends. I didn't waste time. "Who is Mia?" His face changed instantly. His jaw tightened, his eyes darted away. "She's just a friend," he said. I laughed bitterly. Friends don't hold hands across dinner tables. Friends don't post hearts and captions. He ran a hand through his hair, looking trapped. "It's complicated." I shook my head. "No, Daniel. It's simple. You're married to Sophie. You were seeing me, and now you're with her. That's not complicated. That's lying." For a moment, I thought he might deny it, but then his shoulders slumped. "I've made mistakes," he said quietly. "I didn't plan any of this. I just can't seem to stay with one person. I get bored. I look for something new." His words were like ice. I realized then that it had never been about love for him. It was about attention, excitement, the thrill of something secret. And once the shine wore off, he moved on. I felt sick. "I'm done, Daniel," I said firmly. "And one day, Sophie and Mia will be done too. You can't keep this up forever." I stood up, leaving him on the bench. He didn't follow me this time. When I got home, I blocked his number. I also blocked him on social media, erasing every photo, every message, every trace of him from my phone. It was painful, but necessary. I needed space to heal, to remember who I was before him. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work. I started joining Laura for weekend hikes, went to painting classes, and even booked a short trip to the coast by myself. Slowly, I began to feel lighter. But every now and then, I would remember his face at the park, not guilty enough to change, not sorry enough to stop. And I knew I had escaped something far worse than heartbreak. I had escaped a life built entirely on lies. 3 months had passed since I last saw Daniel, and my life felt different in ways I hadn't expected. At first, the silence was hard. I missed the routine of his messages, the sound of his voice, and the comfort of believing someone cared for me. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to see that what I really missed was the version of him I thought was real, not the man he truly was. I filled my days with new habits. Every morning, I walked to a small bakery near my apartment for fresh bread and coffee. The owner, a kind older woman named Grace, would always greet me with a smile and ask how I was doing. Sometimes we talked for a few minutes before I went to work. Those small moments reminded me that kindness didn't have to be complicated or hidden. On weekends, Laura and I tried new things together: pottery classes, hiking trails, even a dance workshop where we laughed more than we danced. She told me once, "I'm proud of you. You could have let this break you, but you didn't." I didn't tell her that there were nights I still lay awake, wondering how many other women Daniel had lied to. But I did tell her that I was trying to let go. One evening, while cleaning my closet, I found a small box of things from my time with Daniel: a ticket stub from our first movie, a scarf he had given me, a photo of us at a cafe. For a moment, I just sat on the floor, holding the scarf in my hands. It still smelled faintly of his cologne. The memories came back in a rush, and for a second, I felt the old ache in my chest. But then I thought about the park, about his confession, about Mia. I thought about the way he had looked at me when I told him I was done, not desperate to change, just annoyed that his game was over. I folded the scarf, placed it back in the box, and decided to take it all to a charity shop the next day. I didn't want reminders of someone who had treated my heart like a spare key he could use when he felt like it. The next morning, as I walked to the shop, I felt lighter. Letting go of those things was like letting go of the last thread tying me to him. I realized then that closure doesn't always come from an apology or an explanation. Sometimes it comes from deciding you deserve better and acting on it. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. I was at a local art fair browsing handmade jewelry when I heard a voice behind me. "Claire?" I turned and saw a man I recognized, Ethan, a friend from university. We hadn't seen each other in years. He told me he was back in the city for work, and we ended up walking around the fair together, talking about old times. Ethan was different from Daniel in every way. He was open, honest, and asked questions without making me feel guarded. We exchanged numbers before parting ways, and over the next month, we met for coffee a few times. He never pushed for more than I was ready to give, and for now, that was enough. One evening, as I walked home from seeing Ethan, I realized something. Daniel's lies had left scars, but they had also taught me important truths. That trust should never be given blindly, that love without honesty isn't love at all, and that my happiness can't depend on someone else's attention. I no longer checked my phone expecting messages that might hurt me. I no longer replayed the past, searching for clues. Instead, I thought about the future, my own future, one I could build without secrets or half-truths. Sometimes, I wondered if Sophie or Mia had found out the full truth about Daniel. Part of me hoped they had, not out of revenge, but so they could be free too. People like him could only hide for so long before the truth caught up. One rainy afternoon, I sat by my window with a cup of tea, watching the city lights blur in the drizzle. I thought about how far I had come since that day at his apartment with the chocolate cake in my hands. Back then, I had been in love with an idea. The idea of a man who cared for me, who was honest, who was mine. Now, I knew that man had never existed, but I also knew that I was stronger for having discovered the truth. As the rain softened, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure from him. I had already closed that chapter myself, and for the first time in months, I truly believed that the best parts of my life were still ahead. I took a sip of my tea, smiled to myself, and whispered, "I'm free."